Greetings and salutations, friends. Welcome back to the project, Realism Project, obviously, in Planet Coaster 1. And we ended up renaming this to the Tornado, just because it seemed a little more fitting. But I want to redo the beginning here, the entranceway. Having three ticket booths was just, well, three sets of ticket booths, sorry, was just stupid. Because people would have to exit the park to go back in to go the other way, so they'd be paying twice. And whilst they're probably stupid enough to do that, I decided that that's probably not going to be very realistic. So once again, we are boarding the crazy train to Path Town. And for a moment, this looked like it was going to work out for me. And then I moved the ticket booths. And yeah, nope, here we go again. So lots of trying, testing, flattening, grid selecting, removing, adding, taking away, and it just, oh my god, like, there's that thing, when you do the same thing more than 3 times and you don't learn from it, that's like the insanity test, right? So yeah, here we go. Here's me demonstrating how completely insane I am. But I did come up with a cunning plan of just making the middle one the main, and then having the two connect to the side like that. I was like, well, okay, fine, fair enough. So let's now we've got the front. Let's connect the side paths up now. And once again, we run into that issue with the grid. The center of the grid not doing what I want it to. It's because I don't have the grid wide enough. If it was 4 across, it probably would have worked perfectly fine. But because I had it 3 across and I was connecting up the sides, it was causing me all kinds of problems. But I ended up, you know what, just screw it. Let's just go with the same thing we did on the back. And then I managed to get the fronts hooked up, and there we are. Now we've got the ticket booth set up and the pathway set. Not really the big entryway plaza that I wanted, but well, we'll work on that. So now I want the building, like the ticket building, the entry building. And I had this idea for something like one of the big stations that you see in the UK, or with the big front end and then the domed roof, or the arched roof, over the top, or maybe something along the lines of the entryway to Universal Studios, which is not too far from me. I know it well. But the first issue I ran across was obviously picking what material I wanted to use, and oddly enough, the firehouse brickwork seemed to fit what was going on in my imagination. I had a picture that I was trying to sort of work off, which is why I have this design going. But trying to find the pieces and parts to actually put it together and get it to do what I wanted to do was the issue. So yeah, let's see if we can't find it. Let's see. Now I'm trying to cobble together some kind of an archway that fits this brickwork, and of course, this is when I discovered that there isn't one. So I would either need to completely redo the brickwork or go back in and figure something else out. But I wanted the supports for that curved roof. So we go with just some standard girders. And then I'm like, well, maybe these brick supports will work nice for the upright instead of the metal. And they do. They work quite nicely. I think they kind of look okay. The only problem is, again, trying to find the arch. So I'm like, well, maybe I can just make one with pieces that are available. So I started experimenting with various potentials, and then I'm like, whilst this would potentially work, I would need to get the brickwork behind it. So I was like, well, that's not going to work either. Okay, well, heck. So now I start searching for other potential solutions to try and make that archway potentially feasible. But nothing is really going to work. And then, of course, the shape right down into the bowels of desperation, I go into the shapes, and nothing. I was like, okay, well, screw it. We can't get the archway. Let's see if we can at least get some kind of decorative piece across the top here, and we'll just work with that as we continue. And I'm like, well, I don't really like the girders just sitting there like that. That's kind of dumb. And then I'm like, well, these supports, they're not decorative enough. But, haha, if you go into vintage, there are these lovely supports here, very Victorian railway station kind of supports, which is precisely kind of the feel I was sort of headed towards. Like a modern brick with a kind of a Victorian, Edwardian kind of feel to it. And then trying to figure out how I'm going to do this cross piece up here. I was like, I could extend the feel across there, and I was going, no, okay, maybe not. And then I was like, well, I could just color match these and use these just to go across and give it a nice little feel there. Something's going to end up covering that gap anyway, I would imagine. Probably the park name, which I actually sat down and created yesterday. But that was offline. So now I'm like, well, this building's kind of dull. Let's see if we can throw some windows on it, or maybe a Mac. I'm kidding. We all know that Mac is not compatible with Planet Coaster. So I'll throw some windows in there just to give it a little bit of life, and then some edging, just to give it a little bit of detail, at least to start with. And I continue on like this, and then I realize that, to be honest, the building is a little skinny. But I continue on anyway. So what I'm doing is just selecting and doing the advanced move. And then once I've got the advanced move enabled, I change the piece by clicking on the required piece in the bottom menu there. So I can just drag it up and put it in place. And it's starting to look okay. The edging kind of throws the windows off a little bit. They're not as central as they were. And then I want some entry points for the workers. And I'm thinking at this point, well, if I've got these doors here, I could potentially put in employee rooms in this building in the back. And now, because I've got the building in this odd shape, it's not, it's not the standard size. It's a square and a half. Now I've got this overhang on the roof, and I'm like, God bless it. This is just. So I go searching again, because I know that there's some smaller pieces that are basically the same, and I'm like, well, okay, well, maybe I can just use these. All right, so we'll just fit these in here, and then we get all the roofing done, and it ends up looking okay, not fantastic. It's not the arched glass roof that I was aiming for, but it's good enough. And then I'm like, well, it still looks a little dull. Let's see if we can find some cornicing or some kind of decoration just on the front there. So now we've got the entryway sort of done. I'm thinking, let's get a flat ride in here. Just as the park existed for a long time. It wasn't a plot of land that was bought recently, cleared out, excavated, and turned into a theme park. It's been somewhat of a park for a little while. So we're going to put in this little this carousel here next to the lake, so it's got a nice lake view. And then I'll do the old, like kind of an old style entry. Like it was not necessarily a theme park or an adventure park or anything. It was just something to draw the people in to the park area before it was purchased by whatever conglomerate currently owns it. So now we do my usual edging along the pathway here. The old flowers again, just to get the scenery rating up and actually make it look relatively nice. So this is a manicured part of the park already. And then, we get the old purple and red this time. Because I've done purple and yellow. So I was like, you know what, purple and red could be interesting. These particular flowers will come in those various types. So I've got that in there now. Now I was like, well, I want to kind of block the view into the ride directly, because, you know, whilst you'd have this nice manicured area here, there would be some greenery behind it. So I was like, well, what kind of fencing are we gonna put down now? So we go with just. I think it ended up going with the metal fencing. I was like, ooh, those could be good with some plants behind them. But I was like, yeah, we'll just go with a cheapy looking metal fence just to do the job. Again, something that you would sort of expect to see on a pre-existing ride, rather than one that's been installed by the very wealthy landowner, which is where are we going to be heading basically after this. A lot of this is going to be is it? Oh yeah, okay, because I removed the park. I'm like, what happened there? But because I removed the park, they all got respawned at the exit. I'm like, well, okay, so this particular ride here, we're not going to do a lot of theming within the ride. All the theming is going to be around the entrance. So now we kind of got this going here. We've got our ride in. Let's see if we can't just flesh out this little area here. One of the things that got me really excited when I was watching the Planet Coaster 2 video was the scenery paintbrush. What a fantastic tool that's going to be. And then, of course, I'm thinking, well, this is not wide enough. This is not deep enough. I need to... okay, I'll come back and deal with that another time. So let's start looking at fencing. Because obviously we need fencing around most of the pathway. And we also want to keep the people from hopping the fence and getting themselves horrifically murdered on the roller coasters. So I'm now trying to find something that's going to look nice. And I kind of settled on this for a minute. I was like, you know, that's not terrible. So let's just, we'll blueprint that. We'll make it smaller brother. We'll blueprint that. And we'll see how that looks. You know, we'll just run that along the edge of this path here. And we'll see how that looks. So we drop down a couple there. And then I kind of take a look at it. I'm like, well, honestly, that's shit. So I'm like, well, let's go ahead. We'll use the railings that come with the footpaths. It kind of buggers up the idea of putting benches off the park, but off the path. But you know, we'll deal with that later. So I'm like, well, now let's level out the path. We'll reconnect it. It looks nice. Let's see if we can't think about the safety rails, because there's a big old roller coaster behind there. And again, not really the kind of thing you'd see in a wealthy park. So I'm like, well, what about some natural hedging? And it never occurred to me that the daylight was running on this. So next time I do this, I'll have to remember. And I was like, okay, so the bamboo hedge, not so much. What about just a natural hedge? We'll put this down and have a look. What if I mix it up and put some different colors in there as well? So now we've got this nice and somewhat natural looking hedge here. I was like, okay, well, sure. So what if we do that and we have those nice manicured square hedges again, and we put the natural hedge boundary in the way, and we'll put the chain link fence up around the actual roller coaster itself. All right, that seems like a plan. But that's it. So that's what we've got going on so far. And next time we'll put down some more stuff and we'll see where we can end up. We have somewhat of a plan going. Thanks for joining me. Much appreciated. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. And feedback is always welcome as long as it's constructive.